What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be working on something a little bit different than usual. As you can see behind me, we've got a mini bike up on the lift. So the other day I was out picking up another project and I threw out my back, so I figured it'd be a great time to hang out in the garage and get some stuff done on this mini bike. I do want to apologize for any background noise. We do have the AC running in here today, super humid and hot outside, so apologizes for that. But we want to put a torque converter on this bike. We don't want to cut it up, and I also don't want to spend a couple $100s or more on a kit. So we're going to piece together our own. We've got a MOOSUN torque converter from Amazon, which you guys will see here in just a second. And we're also going to make ourselves some engine riser plates to move the engine up and forward. So like I said, we don't have to cut anything up. Like I mentioned, we also have some other parts that we put together that I'd like to call a Stage 1 performance kit. Now, if we have time in today's video, we will get all of this installed. If not, we will do the torque converter and engine relocation in today's video, and then I will do a separate video on the performance parts. So don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. Let's get through the intro and jump right into today's video. Alright guys, so now that we've gotten through the intro, let's go ahead and take a look at our parts. First and foremost, what we're going to be focusing on first is this torque converter. We went with the MOOSUN. You can get it in a 1" or 3/4. We went with the 3/4 because our crankshaft is actually 5/8, but you cannot get a Series 30 torque converter in 5/8 unless you buy it from one specific company for a lot more money. But I'm trying to do this pretty cheap, so we went with a $65 torque converter from Amazon, which I've used in the past and they work perfectly fine. So we're gonna have to adapt this over to work on our 5/8 crankshaft. So this is what we've got for parts. Let's dive into the torque converter and get this thing on the bike. Well, I got the chains out of the way, but now we've got to start getting the clutch and the jack shaft plate out of our way so that we can work with the torque converter. So first things first, we've got a bolt right back here that you're gonna have to get out, that nut and bolt right there. Then we can pull the clutch and start getting this whole plate out of here. So let's get some tools and get to work. All right, so to get that bolt in the back out, you're gonna need a 10 and a 13. So we've got that one out of our way. Now we can go ahead and start disassembling our clutch and jack shaft assembly. So first, take the bolt for the clutch out of the crankshaft. Then this clutch should slide right off like so. We'll set that up there out of the way. Then we've also got a few 10mm back here. You're gonna have 4 of them. Grab this plate so it doesn't fall on you. And this should come right out of the way. Once you get the centrifugal clutch and jack shaft assembly out of the way, don't forget to take this little spacer off of your crankshaft, just a little spacer like that. Let's go ahead and unbox the torque converter, and I will start showing you guys the issue with trying to bolt it right up, how the engine sits. You're going to need a longer bolt that will hold our drive clutch to the crankshaft with this odd washer lock thing. So we're going to need a bolt for that. Then you're going to need a 5/8 ID to 3/4 outside diameter adapter for the crankshaft. We're going to have to customize this a little bit to make it fit because it does not perfectly slide over our crankshaft, but it does perfectly fit inside our drive clutch. We're also going to need a piece of key. This is, I believe, 1/4 inch, and we're also going to have to cut this and grind this down to make it work with our adapter and our drive setup here. So that's what we're going to need to make all of this work. Let's head over to the bike and see if this will bolt right on, and I will show you guys what we have to do to move the engine to make everything fit properly. Alright, so now that we're over at the bike, I want to go ahead and show you guys why this thing won't just bolt up. So as you can see, when we go to set it on there and get the bolt holes lined up, we cannot put the backing plate all the way back to where it needs to go because it is hitting this right here, which is your chain guard support. And then even if that was out of the way, if you tried to bolt this up, it's going to hit at the engine plate and the frame, so it's just not going to work in this location. So I'm going to show you guys how we're going to raise this engine up and forward to make everything work. But while we're here, I want to show you guys a couple tricks that I have learned. This is the perks of you guys watching me do it first. So first thing is, I go ahead and take this bolt right out of here, and then you can tap this area in a little bit with like a ball peen hammer right in here and in here. And then one other thing we will do real quick is take this bolt up here. You guys probably can't see it, but there's 4 bolts on the muffler. We're going to be taking the rear outer bolt, so the rear closest bolt to us out of the top of this muffler, and I will show you guys why we do that a little bit later on. Let's start making some spacers to move this engine up and forward. Alright guys, so this is what I'm going to use for my engine riser kit here. This is just what I had laying around. It is galvanized, so don't weld to it unless you really grind it good. But you can use whatever you want for material. I am using 1.5 by 2.5, and this is going to be perfect for rising it up, and we can offset our holes to move it forward. So let's go ahead and measure out. I want 2 pieces of this at 10.5 inches long. So let's go ahead and cut 2 of those. Alright, so we've got 2 pieces cut here, 10.5 inches long each, and now we're going to have to drill a few holes in them, actually 4 holes for our engine, and to bolt down to the old engine plate. So what I like to do is take a piece of cardboard so we can make a stencil or a template for our engine mount holes, and then we're going to use it to drill some holes on these new pieces here. So I'm going to go ahead and get these drilled real quick, and then we will grab our template and I will show you guys how I measured them and where you should place them. Alright, so I've got my holes drilled here, but a couple things I would recommend just to make sure you don't get confused is I mark each piece. This one's outside, this one's going to be the right outside, so this would be left outside if you were sitting on the bike, and then these are going to be top and this will be bottom. So starting with the top, we've got our template that we made here, and what I did is I went about 1 inch in from the front side of our plates here, or our pieces of metal. So if this is the front of the bike, I measured down 1 inch, and then I just set my template on there and about centered the bolt holes from the template onto there, about centered them with these 2 pieces snug up against each other. So pretty simple there, and then I just flipped it over, remembering that this is still going to be the front. So now I measured 5/8 in from the opposite end, which is going to give us that nice offset, which I will show you guys once we get on the bike. But I measured 5/8 in and then centered it again with these pieces nice and tight up against each other, and that's how we came up with our bolt pattern. So now that we've got that taken care of, we are ready to take these on over to the bike, and I will show you guys. We'll get these bolted up and I will show you how it's going to move the engine for us. Alright, so we went ahead and got these things painted, our nice little risers here. This is the closest match that we could find at the local hardware store. It's not bad, it's pretty close to the color of the bike, so that's what we're going to run with. Let's head on over to the bike and get this engine lifted up and set onto our relocation plates. As you guys may have noticed, I didn't make notches in our riser plates to be able to slide the engine forward or backwards, and that's because I'm going to use the original slots in the factory engine plate to slide our whole bracket and engine assembly forward or backwards, and then we're just going to use the bolts on the engine to line it up side to side. So as you guys can see, we've now got the engine set in here with our riser plates that we made. We've got all the bolts started. None of them are tight, and that's for good reason. I will show you guys a little bit later why we left them loose. But as you guys know, and as I mentioned, I do have a kit that I put together for performance, and that includes an exhaust. But I wanted to wait to put the exhaust on until after we get the torque converter done, so that you guys can see that it will fit with a stock exhaust. The only thing you have to do is pull that bolt out that I mentioned so that it doesn't hit on the frame here. So now that we've got the engine set up here on our riser plates and relocated, we can go ahead and start putting our new torque converter on and get everything assembled. Alright, so now that we've got that tapped out of the way a little bit, now we can go ahead and start bolting our backing plate for the torque converter on. Just go ahead and line up the holes that fit for your engine. In our case, it's the middle holes on the inner circle. We can come back and check those by hand a little bit later. Now you guys can see that we've got the torque converter backing plate on here. You have plenty of room by this chain guard brace right here, this bracket. Don't need to cut it, don't need to modify it, nothing. You could actually come back quite a bit. When or if you ever change the exhaust, you could come back more if you decided to. But now that we've got this all set up, let's go ahead and take care of getting our 3/4 inch drive clutch onto this 5/8 crankshaft. We've got to go ahead and tackle the next challenge, which is the crankshaft diameter. Now on these, according to my measurements, it's about 16 millimeter, which is pretty close to 5/8. And the problem with that is most of the Series 30 torque converters either come in a 3/4 or a 1 inch. We've got to come up with a way to adapt that. Now the way that I'm going to go about doing that is I've got an adapter here that is a 5/8 to 3/4 adapter, but like I said, this is 16 millimeter, not exactly 5/8. Now we could tap that on there and make it fit, but then the problem is this wouldn't fit over it because by tapping this on, it's gonna open it up a little bit. So we can't do that. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this over to the bench and I'm gonna use a barrel sander, which I will show you guys on our Dremel. And we're gonna slowly open this up until it snugly but easily slides right onto this crankshaft. And then we can go about adapting this to lock onto here. And then also make it so that this collar locks snugly onto the crankshaft. Alright, so after you take a bunch of turns at the barrel sander and you have this thing to the point where it slips on nice and easy the whole way through, we're going to go ahead and put our collar adapter on, the one that we just sanded down. Make sure we line up the keyway. Once you get the adapter on there, we're going to go ahead and just make sure that the center out of our drive clutch still fits on there nice and smooth. All the way down nice and smooth, no spots that it catch or anything like that. Since we took the material out, it's not flared out, so this just slides right on like it should. So that's good to go. Now I'm going to show you what I do to lock this collar to the actual crankshaft. So what we're going to do is we take a little regular key and I set it in here like so. And I just take a little grinder or a file or whatever you want to use, and I just work it down until it's just about flush with the top of our collar adapter so that a washer or something could slide over it. You've got to use the key and cut it down lengthwise, shave it down on the top like I mentioned, because this part of the drive is going to slide over our collar adapter and go onto here like so. And where the built-in key is on this, not sure if you guys are going to be able to see it on video, but it's inset quite a bit from the engine side. So you can make your key about that big and it won't interfere with this at all. And now this will slide over it and it will catch on that collar, which is locked to the shaft because of the key we just made. Alright, so now that we have our custom keyway made and our custom collar adapter, let's go ahead and assemble this entire torque converter and get this thing ready to ride. And we have to run the washer and the spacer that the kit comes with. That will depend on your application, how much space you actually need. I'm pretty sure that we're going to need the washer and spacer. Now we can go ahead and slide it on. Got to line your keyway up. Make sure it goes all the way in, up against the spacers that we put in there. Now, the next piece that we're going to put on is this little brass bronze bushing here. Now, make sure you put this on. It goes right on this right here. So now is a good time to go ahead and tighten the nut on the driven. Make sure that the jack shaft is properly lined up and slid all the way towards us, up against its stop. And then we'll go ahead and run this nut in. It's 24 millimeter. And you want to keep running it in. So we went ahead and ran the nut in on the driven. It still spins freely in both directions, but there's no wobble or a looseness to it. So that's ready to go. Now we can go ahead and grab our belt. Just always remember flat side towards the engine. So we're going to go ahead and put it on our driven. Get it started onto our drive. Make sure you got that brass bushing in there, and that is lined up, good to go. Next, you're going to want to grab the rest of the clutch assembly here. So now we can go ahead and slide this whole assembly on there like so. The keyed washer is going to go in here and lock onto that keyway as well. And you want to make sure this washer sits flat. So ours sits flat like so. Then you just take your bolt, make sure everything stays lined up, and run this guy in. Alright, so that's finger tight, holding everything in place, everything straight and true how it should be. Now let's go ahead and take a look from the front or from the back and make sure that our belt looks like it is lined up. Now I'm just going to pull lightly on the pull start on the other side and just hold tension on it while I tighten this bolt down. You don't need to go crazy, it's a little tiny bolt, so I just go snug. Something like that there. And now our torque converter drive assembly is on here and complete. Now all we've got to do is you guys have to make a chain. I've already made a chain the proper length. Alright, so what I like to do at this point is take a piece of chain that we had laying around and I put it on the rear sprocket and the sprocket on our jack shaft of our torque converter setup, and I use it to try to help me eyeball what is straight. It looks like we have it pretty straight where it is, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten up the 4 bolts on the engine, and then we can start working on making a train the proper size and getting it tensioned. So let's go ahead and get this engine bolted down tight. Alright, now we can go ahead and get the bike dropped off the lift. Then we can make up a chain about the right size and start tensioning it. Alright, so now that we have the bike on the ground, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and loosen this nut. In my case, it's a 19 millimeter. And then we're going to go ahead and loosen this nut here on both sides. They're both 10 millimeter. Bring the tire forward a little bit. We'll size up the chain and make one the correct size. And then once we have it on there, we can use this setup to draw the tire back to tension it to what we would like. So let's go ahead and get this thing broke free, slid forward a little bit, and then we'll make up a chain. Alright, so just in case you guys have never used a chain brake, it's super simple. Tighten that up, put your link in there that you want to brake, and then you just hold the brake and turn the pin for it to push the center locking pin out of the chain. And it'll break this link for us. Pops that pin out. Back out on that, back out on that. Then you got your link that you don't need anymore out. Should put us at about the right size. Now we can throw our master link in there real quick. Alright, so now that we have this stick out matching on both sides, I'm going to go ahead and tighten the nut back up. The only other few things that you have to do is take a file, or in my case I used the belt sander for this dipstick, and I took the edges off right here so that it would clear this bar without any issue. Nice and easy to get it in and out, and check for oil. And then you've got to take the cover for the torque converter that it comes with right here, and you've got a notch for where your chain is going to go. They don't cut them because sometimes the chain lands in different spots. In our case it lands right there, so I just took some tin snips and cut that out. This will go on here just like so with a couple bolts that come in the torque converter kit. Other than that, all we've got to do is throw the rear chain guard on and take this thing out for a ride. So let's throw some bolts in this thing and take it for a ride. There you have it, guys. As you've seen, we were riding this thing around in the last few clips, and this thing rides so much better with this new torque converter setup than it did with the centrifugal clutch. In our case, we did all of this on our Coleman CT200UEX, but I believe something similar would work on most mini bikes. So make sure to check it out on your mini bike if you guys want to get a torque converter on it. Super budget option, and it worked out great. This thing rides phenomenal. Super happy with how it came out. But we're not going to have time in this video to put the stage 1.5 performance kit that I came up with on the bike, so we'll save that for next time. As always, I appreciate you guys for checking out the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell so that you get notified anytime we put out a video with the GTO, the Duramax, or the Hellcat, or in today's case, the mini bike. We will catch you on the next one.